doesn't actually start until I pour. Tonight, I've selected to drink out of my Wheel and Chill Stein.
Nice.
I've yet to use mine.
Is that a Wheel and Chill Stein or a Wheel and Chill Steen?
It's Wheel and Chill Stein.
Copy that. Hi. How's everybody doing tonight? We're the Black Tower Podcast. We are a Wheel of Time podcast. You have stumbled onto our show either intentionally or by accident, and we are going to inject you with madness, taint, and of course, as always, knowledge.
Did we sign up for injection?
Yeah, we did. Did you not know that? We did it last week. Yeah, we were getting really sick of the just like pounding it into people practice by practice by practice. So we just made a formula that you can just that's injection sounds, by the way, just in case you didn't know that.
All right.
Yeah. So thank you for being here. Thank you for stumbling on us, whether that was by your choice or someone else's.
Or if the algorithm is in your brain, if Jeff Bezos is in your brain.
Yes, that would count as someone else's. But we are happy that you are here. Thank you for joining us on this lovely, for us, it's a Tuesday afternoon, evening. My name is Daniel. I am one of the hosts of the Black Tower podcast. I am your Amin Khan Mahale, and I will let these other two wonderful gentlemen introduce themselves.
Thank you.
Well.
That was so kind of you. I'm the Soravan Mahale Josh, and the winner of the Black Tower Greatest Beard Ever Award. Step up, man. You do it, man, because you're amazing.
I'm Andrew.
Yeah, there you go. And he is correct. I think you actually do have the best beard I have seen in Wheel of Time.
It's true.
A relatively close second is Tom. Tom actually has a very nice beard as well, but I think that I'm a fan. I am a fan of the Bijan Mahale's beardage. Just saying. Big fan. Big fan of the Bijan Mahale's beardage. See what I did there? That was
Big
what we
fan
call in the
Bijan beard.
Silence. All right, guys. So we are back. Another episode. We're talking about fun stuff. We're getting a little metaphysical again today. So we'll go ahead and, well, actually, this isn't metaphysical. This is more historical and philosophical rather than metaphysical.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about sort of an ethereal philosophical thing that's actually been debated in the Wheel of Time for many years at this point, because there are sort of conflicting accounts. Also, the unreliable source or narrator, as well as not that much information about history, or really just snippets of history that make this a little bit of a question. So we're going to talk about it a little bit going on here in this episode. But before we do that, we do want to talk about a few things. Number one, by the time you are hearing this, if you are not a Patreon, the Gathering Madness is over. We've had a lot of fun. We have drunk a lot of drinks. We've eaten a lot of food. It's been thoroughly enjoyable for everyone involved. Oh, that's not true. No, it's tomorrow. If you're listening to this publicly when it comes out, it's in like 24 hours. So
That's
get
right.
to LA.
Now!
Be there, have drinks with us, eat taint with us, and do a lot of fun activities with us. If you can't be there in person, be there online. It's going to be great. You can find links on our Discord and on our website, which is blacktowerpod.com. You definitely want to be there. You definitely want to go there. You want to learn all of the different things about us. We're pretty fun guys, I promise. My mom tells me that all the time. And we definitely want you to be part of our in circle by knowing where we post things and why we post things and who we post things to. You can find out all of that information on Black Tower Pod. And if you want to be decked out in Wheel of Time gear, we do also have that as well. Josh is actually wearing something that he is getting us for the Gathering Madness. It is not something that we sell, but we do actually sell cool things along those lines on Spreadshirt and through New Creations by Jen. So go ahead and go check out our merchandise areas because we do have some pretty cool designs. And there's always new stuff coming out. Maybe not always. That's not fair. There is new stuff coming out on occasion throughout the year that exists.
Keeping it fresh. Keeping it fresh.
Indeed. Other than that, we do want to thank our sponsor tomorrow, Crystal Barista, for going ahead and helping us throw such a fun party that will be happening or has already happened if you're not watching this video or listening to this podcast on that Friday.
That's a good point. If you guys are listening to, because this is going to be on YouTube and therefore will be eternal. Mm-hmm. First off, subscribe to our YouTube. Like, come on, you don't want to miss all this.
YouTube is eternal. That's funny.
And if you're doing this, like after you finish listening to the episode, go look up our Gathering Madness videos because they're always a good time.
Yes.
Always.
As long as they're already out, which again, they won't be out if you're watching this Friday morning, but they will be soon.
Yeah.
But I know a number of you cannot actually get to our videos or our podcasts on the day that they are put out, and that is super okay. Thank you for watching or listening, period. It's amazing that you do that in any way, shape, or form. If you are one of those people, the Gathering Madness will be over, so there should be videos available wherever videos are sold near you. So go and check that out. But enough about us. This is about you. This is about Wheel of Time. This is about fun new topics. And this is about not getting spoiled. So we got to go ahead and throw on that spoiler condom to make sure that nobody gets bad stuff in their eyes or ears. So, Andrew, if you would do us the honor of going ahead and protecting all the people.
Welcome to the Black Tower, a Wheel of Time podcast. All right, let's check this one. This podcast will likely be spoiling books 1 through... Oh, what's this? An envelope addressed to me. No name, though. Let's see what's inside. Oh my. This podcast will likely spoil all the books in the series, and apparently being a Patreon will expose you to information that should be left unseen. Protect yourself by pulling that spoiler condom all the way on. And I need a drink. That's way more of Andrew than I have ever wanted to see. Why would you braid it down there?
Lies. We all know you, more shoddy. It's why you encouraged the Spare of Time to go ahead and put that
right.
Do that picture that's above Andrew right now so that you could see more of him. Yes. That's
the one.
Paint
right
me like one of your Wheel of Time girls.
That's the one right there.
Awesome.
All right.
So now that you have all of your spoiler warnings and things like that, we are going to give you what the topic is. I will stop talking in a minute and let the others talk once we have asked this question. But throughout the Wheel of Time series, there has been a bit of a debate on whether, at the time of the books, during the years of 998 NE and 999 NE and possibly into 1000 NE, there is no debate over whether the Dark One is real. Not really. Basically, everyone knows that that entity exists, that it can touch the world, and that it is doing that. That you can see those effects, you can feel those effects. There is a place that you can visit the Dark One, though many people do not choose to do that, and that it's a real thing. It is an entity that is in the world and acting on it. No debate. not really. And we as the audience know that that is true. I know that some people have never really seen the Dark One, and so there may still be a little bit of a debate in the Southlands or in Shan-Chan or in Shara or something like that. But at the very minimum, the main characters seem to have no debate over that. And we, the audience, have no debate over the fact that the Dark One is real.
Especially getting into Lord of Chaos.
Yes. However, there is actually a lot of debate among the fandom and seemingly in the books themselves to a certain degree of whether the Dark One was actually a known entity or more like, in some ways, our real world interpretation of the devil, where some people think that it is very real and that it is acting on the world as we speak and doing things and very much present, but they have to take it on faith because there is no actual serious 100% can define evidence of an entity that is the devil that you can go and visit in the world. And then there are other people who, because of that, do not believe that the devil actually exists and that it is actually just an allegory for human failings and temptation and things like that. So I wanted to ask the question, and it's an interesting debate that I think is fun to talk about. So I will definitely sort of ask my co-hosts here. When do you think that people actually determined that the Dark One was a real thing, a real entity that is actually in the world? And where on the timeline do you think that was sort of went from based on faith as we know it, or based on evidence as we know it as the audience in Wheel of Time, if you will? Was that from the very beginning? Was that along the lines? Was that in a certain age? Also, very, very clearly, the world of the Wheel of Time is cyclical. We know that. That is the whole point of Robert Jordan's story to a certain degree. And so we are assuming that time started at the beginning of what these people think of as the first age. There's probably a shit ton of stuff that happened before that because time is cyclical and this has happened many times before and will happen many times again. But we're sort of assuming for the purposes of this talk that the story's first age is where time begins at the moment of creation at the beginning of the first age. That's just an assumption we're going to make for this discussion.
Okay.
So where on the timeline between creation into the first age, into the Age of Legends, and then into the third age, do you guys think people actually realized that the devil or that the Dark One wasn't just a thing that you had to believe on faith, but an actual real entity that was in the world, of the world, well, not of the world, sorry, in the world, acting on the world? That's what I meant.
So this is an interesting kind of line of thought, right? Because we just talked about Ishamael and him as Elan in the Age of Legends, and him being a philosopher and him philosophizing and kind of doing the whole like, I'm tired of this repeat thing. I don't want to live on a wheel. I don't want time to be cyclical. I want time to be linear. You could almost make the argument because, you know, then you fast forward to where the books are and you get people that use the names of the Forsaken to, you know, scare little kids. You know, oh, if you don't go to bed, Moghedian's gonna get you. You know, if you don't, listen to your mama and daddy, fucking Samael's gonna come and get you. Like, they would use these names as almost like archetypes. And I don't know. It's one of those things that's like, yeah, who's someone that lived 3,000 years ago that we had record of? I don't know that we do have anybody who lived 3,000 years ago that we have record of.
There are plenty of people who lived 3,000 years ago that we have record of.
Okay, well, I can't think of any at this point in time. But when it comes down
to a number
to
of people in the ancient Roman Empire, in the ancient Chinese Empire, in the ancient Indian or Mesopotamian era.
I'm saying like named historical figures that we would look back on and go, I mean, that's kind of like that's a person, but they were so long ago that it's more like an abstract idea. Like,
okay, I get that.
They're not really a person.
Confucius.
Yeah, perfect example. Confucius. Everybody knows, Confucius say blah, 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 whatever. But it's like, it's more of an idea. Leonardo da Vinci, everything we know about Leonardo, and he wasn't even 3,000 years ago.
No.
But everything we know about him, how much of that is true, how much of that is legend. And so as time progresses, things obscure, right? What you're doing here with respect to the Dark One specifically is interesting because you're talking about an entity that both A, has always existed from the moment of time, has always existed, and B, has never existed on our mortal physical plane of being that we know, right? According to the rules of the otherworldly beings, the Creator and the Dark One.
Oh, okay, yeah, I get what you're saying.
And as people living in this time, I can see them kind of doing the whole, the devil made me do it, right? That's a popular like phrase for one reason or another. But I can see people having that kind of a relationship with the Dark One and the Forsaken, saying, I mean, they're not real. They're just kind of things that we use. They're ideas. They're names that we give to ideas that help us classify things, because we as people love to classify things.
Why won't you die? Because I am an idea, and ideas are bulletproof.
And there's a movie quote of the night.
Yeah, it is. Sorry, keep going.
No, so they get this real interesting thing where, like we were talking about, we as readers just accept Creator, Dark One. They're the supernatural forces. They are the beings that run order and chaos. One seeking to organize order, one seeking to destroy order, and they're kind of caught in a roundabout way doing their thing. But so we as readers go, okay, there's a very real entity, that there is a Creator and a Dark One. And we know that the Creator has a champion and the Dark One has champions, and they're influencing the world. As far as like flipping that switch and going from a belief or a concept or an abstract in your mind to help you classify things, that could be a tipping point in someone's life, right? If Elan is a philosopher and delves too deep, and has contact with, because he flipped to the dark, he forsook the light prior to the boar, didn't he? Or was that at post boar?
I want to say it was pre-boar. No, it was post. Okay.
Was it post, Andrew? So Elan has these ideas. He's already kind of like deep in his philosophy, and all of a sudden they bore into the mountain. They bore into the Dark One's prison, and all of a sudden this is a very real thing. For thousands of people, the Dark One went from being an abstract concept to a very real entity almost instantly. And I think that's the moment.
So your sort of take on this is, at the moment that they bore into his prison, that's when humanity discovered that the Dark One wasn't just a thought process. It's an actual entity.
Yeah, that's because even up until that point,
collectively,
right,
they did not think that it was a real thing.
Well, even up until that point, they were exploring and trying to look for the essence of the Dark One, or something more powerful than the one power. And it's like, I think they knew there was something there. I think they knew that they were tapping into something that they didn't quite understand. And that's where the arrogance comes in. That's where it becomes problematic. And so I think once they tap that prison and that direct touch was unleashed on the world, I think that's the moment in which the Dark One went from, oh yeah, there's evil, the devil made me do it, to a very real, oh shit, he coming for our kids, he coming for our sheep and our Joe cars and our show wings, and we are just fucked. And then some people like Elan turn to the dark. They go, okay, cool. I've stared into the abyss. I have seen this is a losing battle, and it's better to be on the right hand of the devil than in his path.
Interesting. All right, Andrew.
I think that's it. I think that's it.
What do you think?
I don't remember what the question is.
On the timeline between the moment of creation, assuming that the moment of creation was started the first age, into the first age, then into the Age of Legends, then into the third age, where is it that you think that the Dark One went from, that people realized that the Dark One was actually a real entity rather than just maybe an abstract philosophical thought or existential thought, and actually was real, as we, the audience, know it is?
Well, I don't think he was even a thought or a concept going into the second age at all. I think evil existed, but nobody gave evil a name leading into the utopia of the second age. Because we see that the first age and the second age kind of follow each other thematically. An emphasis on technology, an emphasis on scientific advancement, an emphasis on the rationale and the logic. So you're not going to talk about, some scary mythical boogeyman that may or may not be real, but there's no evidence for, or you don't believe there's any evidence for, you can't point to evidence for, and still entertain that thought in mass as a society. So when you get to the second age, this era of paradise, of unprecedented technological advancement, where we've just now rediscovered magic, or discovered magic for the first time, whichever you want to see it as. There's not going to be any thought of the Dark One. Everything's good. For the most part, everything's happy. Nobody's really going to worry about it. There are people that probably do bad things. Absolutely. That's why we have binding rods and binding chairs and shit like that. I think it takes a while after the boar, after Mirren does what she does, and drills into the bore with old what's his face that dies and is forgotten immediately. I never remember his name.
Vitamin.
Yeah.
The
It takes a
Digimon.
while
The
for that to
research
spread.
Digimon.
Yeah. So, because they're the only ones that are really focusing on this. I mean, other people obviously know that this is going on, but this is their realm of study. This is their stuff they're looking into. And if Mirren is immediately just going to be like, you know what, I'm just going to change my name to Lanfear and I'm going to go help, the big scary guy that just popped out of literally nowhere. They're not going to share that information with anybody. So it's going to take a while for that to spread because I think we have a proclivity for reading the events of the Second Age, the bore, the collapse, the breaking. We have a proclivity for reading this stuff as like boom, 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 boom. This all happened really fast, and it really didn't.
Oh no!
It took time. There was wars, there was battles for quite a long time, leading up to the break. So before Luce Theron and the Hunter Companions even go to reseal the bore at what is left of the Sharon at Column Dom, they've been waging battle after battle. And while they're doing this news of this mythical entity, this mythical force is going to be spreading out across the world. And thus the identity of Shaitan is reborn in the world. But unlike potentially unlike religious or mythological deities or figures, it's going to come with a tangible effect, with a tangible presence, something that you can see, effects that you can see, people that you can see. They're doing things like you're going to be able to tell that this is a real entity because of what's happening to the world. They just have to be real by virtue of the effects. So, excuse me, but I think it's a relatively short time that the world has an opportunity to believe, or mostly believe, that Shaitan or the Dark One is a real entity. It's a short amount of time in comparison to the overall scope of the Wheel of Time. Because as soon as the breaking starts, this is obviously after the imperfect seal on the board, the Dark One influence is dramatically reduced, and now the only evil that exists in the tangible world are insane male channelers. So now the Aes Sedai are the evil. They're the enemy. They're the boogeyman. And that's why we still see, I think, remnants of the Dark One and the stories of the Dark One and the Forsaken still make it through, because there were many, many, many years of conflict. But the vast majority of people are more afraid of the Aes Sedai and more concerned that the Aes Sedai are going to do something to them than they ever are, that a Forsaken's going to show up or that the Dark One's going to show up. With the exception of the Aes Sedai and people like Ingtar and the Borderlanders. Because if the Trollocs are real, then Agenor is real. If Agenor is real, then Shaitan is real. And if Shaitan is real, well, all of the other creepy crawlies and all of the other people are real. So the products and elements of the story themselves lend credence to the story itself being true. But not everybody knows that, because like Two Rivers, they still believe Trollocs are a myth. They're, boogeyman tales used to scare kids, when in fact they're very much a reality. So Borderlands, at least, not Zaldea. Fucking hell, I'm blanking on names. Yeah, at least Shinar knows it's real. Harvalon at least knows it's real. But outside of that, other than maybe the wise ones of the IEO, I don't think anybody knows. I think just that quickly, Shaitan has already been relegated back to a scary story, another frightening tale, along with his 13 Forsaken, to scare children into behaving. Which would explain why people freely talk about them and like, hey, you need to be on your best behavior, or the father of lies will come get you. They invoke these people's names, with the exception of Shaitan. They do just say the Dark One, like he's Voldemort or some shit. But
yeah, I was gonna actually mention that the name of Shaitan, you don't say that. Like you say that and bad things happen. Like that's
Well, we see that in Lord of the Rings too.
mm-hmm.
Like you don't say Sauron or his eye turns on you kind of thing. This kind of thing, like though they're so bad you can't even say their name, but they'll focus on you and bad things happen. But they still invoke the names and the identities of, to some extent, of the Forsaken, of the Dark One. But they don't tell their kids stories about how the crazy guys or the crazy men that can use magic will come for them. Because that's still a very real fear. Because the Aes Sedai are real. You just don't see male channels.
Right. I like you bring up a really good point though. I like that we go from the Age of Legends, and between the Age of Legends, the breaking, and fast forward to where we are. I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a backtrack. I think you lose that knowledge that the Dark One is a physical, tangible, air quotes, real entity that one can interact with, or that is actively interacting with the pattern. And I think they're sort of relearning that, especially with the advent of the Forsaken being let loose. You still, I mean, halfway through the series, you still have people that don't actively believe it. They don't believe it. They're like, yeah, whatever, cool, whatever. Rand is coming out and being like, I'm the Dragon Reborn, bitch. And they're like, oh, okay, Rand. Whatever, buddy.
Well, yeah, I mean, you grow up your entire life being told, hey, don't leave your feet dangling off the bed or the boogeyman will grab them to drag you under the bed. And eventually you hit a point in your life, it scares you as a kid. When in reality, the story only exists to try to get kids to keep covered up so they don't get sick, because kids are kids. But you reach a point where you're old enough where it's like, okay, there's no news article, there's no factual basis for this, there's no evidence of this, there's none of this. I highly doubt this is going to happen. I don't believe this is real. And you reach a point to where if somebody was to tell you right now the boogeyman is real, I would say like 90% of people are going to be like, huh, okay, that's funny. Or, you know, it'll be some incredibly exaggerated way to insult somebody. You know, oh, the boogeyman is real and his name is fucking Jon Snow or whoever. Okay, I don't know why I chose Jon Snow, but
no, I'm actually glad you did, because think about it like this. Someone comes up to you and says, the devil is real and his name is Flugar. It's a good a name as any. But that there's got to be an element of that in the story. Like people come up and be like, oh yeah, his name is Shaitan. Why do we call him that? You know, his name, you know, Grendel. Oh yeah, okay, Grendel. Seems like an old-fashioned timey name to me.
Like, what is his actual name? Oh, his name is actually Steve. But we gave him this title and say it's actually his name, when it's really just a title we gave.
Steve.
So I'm actually very curious now. I don't disagree with your points at all. That's not the purpose of this question. But we know that in the story, there is this saying that people say, which is just certifiably untrue, which is this mantra of the Dark One and all of the Forsaken were sealed in Shaiol Gul at the moment of No, they weren't. Maybe the Dark One was. That part of the saying may actually still be true. Probably is. But we know that the Forsaken were people. If they were people and they made that choice to join the Dark One, we know at the time, or we know that the time they were sealed in with the Dark One was the resealing of the bore after the drilling of the bore just prior to the breaking of the world.
Yeah, the great Bondo moment.
Yes.
Where Lou Theron
The great
squeezed this
Bondo
tube of
muffin.
Bondo and sanded it over the board.
Yep. And
But
so
it's like one of
my-
those shitty mechanic fails,
Right.
right? Where it's like he bondoed it, but what he should have done is pulled the dent out first and then used it to smooth the dent.
All right, guys, today on That's Fucked Up.
That's fucked up.
That's fucked up. But so my question is, why is it that then sort of later on in the story everyone still remembers the Forsaken, yet remember events so badly that they're saying this mantra that is certifiably untrue, and also not giving as much credence to the fact that the Dark One is actually real, given that they know that the Forsaken are real, and it's part of their mantra that they say, because the Forsaken are so real and were such real people that they went over to the Dark and were sealed with him. Does that all make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
I will try to give my answer and see if my answer jives with the question.
You know what, Andrew? You go ahead and take this one first,
Yeah.
buddy.
Okay. So we see already in the story that people religiously butcher story and or butcher fact of what actually happened. Including some of the main characters themselves. I mean, Rand says for a brief while, oh, I killed the Dark One. Until finally, after, I don't know, 100 pages, Moraine finally is like, you moron, you think it's that easy. And it's like, this is why kids...
You didn't kill that Dark One.
Yeah, this is why kids need video games. So that they can have their hopes and dreams crushed when the second and third health bar show up.
Or
after they've used all of their potions.
Or 80s horror movies when the villain never dies the first time. Never.
Or the second, or the third,
sometimes,
or the fourth, or the fifth.
How many Halloweens
and finally, in 2022, we have Halloween Ends, which we all know is bullshit because they're not going to stop milking that until...
Oh, absolutely. Nobody stops milking Michael. But I mean, so in their own time, with reasonable access to the actual events and actual witnesses, you go 3 towns over and the story's been fucked up 6 ways from Sunday. So, I mean, and that's the thing, like amongst the common populace, I don't recall ever seeing, like, there's an availability of books, but every time we see an availability of books, it's at a researcher's house or in the library or the sitting room where Rand is. It's always in these more noble areas or that somebody's collected over time. And then there's the one-off instance here and there where somebody has like a book or two. Like I think the Wine Spring Inn had like what they call the library, and it was like it was essentially that many books.
Yeah.
It was like my bookshelf. That was their library.
Was it 14 books with a small novella prologue?
Well, that and a statue of Jiraiya. So
yes,
that was their effigy of
that's it. No,
Jiraiya.
No, you know what? That's what the Wine Spring had. The Wine Spring Inn, that is now canon. We declare the Wine Spring Inn, the 14 books that they had was the Wheel of Time book series.
And nobody read it, just like in real life.
You see Egwene skip to the end. Fucking crystal bullshit. What?
Egwene. Egwene's
like, oh, it's a noble sacrifice, but why? Galwin, really? That's who I go for? Fuck, I'm stupid. I'm not going to say that. He's not dumb, but there were plenty of better options. Anyway, that's not the point. Shit. Yeah, in a world where people willingly choose to be in love with Galwin, do we really expect them to remember the events accurately? Come on. But so it's the fact that they remember the names of the Forsaken. One, I think is going to be it leads a lot of credence to just how terrifyingly powerful and effective the Chosen or the Forsaken were in the scope of time between Bor is open and the seal is redone. How much damage those 13 people had to do to have them known by their new names almost universally. Like, at most, people forget Agenor and Balthamel and maybe Balal. At most. Most people remember, everybody remembers Ishmael because he's, the father of lies. And then they remember Lanfear, the crazy, obsessed ex-girlfriend. There's a couple of these figures that they all remember, but their names stick out because the Aes Sedai are enough remain and enough are alive in the world to remember who these people are. And it takes an
by
entity.
The way, just real quick, sorry, I didn't. Ishamael is the betrayer of hope. The Dark One is actually the father of lies.
He portrays himself as the same thing.
Yes,
Balsamon is
which is who in disguise?
Which is
depends on what part you're talking about.
Name another part where Balsamon is anybody other than Ishamael.
Well, but the reason that he chooses to go ahead and use Balsamon is that is another name for the Dark One. That's why Ishamael is using it. But you have to have the foundation for Balsamon actually being a name for the Dark One for Ishamael to decide to use that as the disguise that he chooses, where he is pretending to be the Dark One.
Oh, sure. I mean,
if I go ahead and pull out a character that you don't know, it loses its effect.
You can parse it out like that, sure, but the overall point remains Father of Lies, the title that accompanies the name and the person portraying that particular person. I lost my thought halfway through there.
That was, I don't know what.
I think it's interesting, and we'll do this. I think it's interesting because in one respect, because we do, as Andrew was saying, we have some Forsaken that are more renowned than others. I think that's 100% accurate to say. I don't think anybody's like, oh, Asmodean's going to come for you. And if they do, they're like, oh, yeah, good. At least it's not fucking Mogedion or Lanfear or Samael or something like that. So I think that's an interesting point to make, where you've got the names are so revered, but they're still not on the same level as like the Dark One, where you don't say the Dark One's name because bad things happen. But you can invoke the name of the Forsaken to threaten bad things happening.
Interesting. Okay.
What were you saying, Andrew? I'm sorry. I like went way off the rails. My brain ADD'd, and I've got no frame of reference for what's happening now.
I have no clue. Press on, gents. Press on.
Press on!
Sorry about that. Okay, so I have sort of a new question related to this. We have been, or for the purposes of this discussion, I did go ahead and say at the beginning that the sort of assumption that we were working off of was the fact that the moment of creation happened, then the first age, then the second age, then the third age. With this question, it kind of doesn't matter as far as that, and it actually is somewhat telling in a way whether you sort of add on other ages before that. But sort of we get to the third age, and at the very end of the third age, Rand successfully seals the Bor, presumably based on what we know and what we're being told as the audience. Again, unreliable narrator. I get all of that. But again, sort of the assumption here is that Rand seals up the bore at the very least better than Lews Therin did, if not, nearing perfect closure, if that makes sense. So we're now going into the fourth age. Are we basically back to the first age now, where humans will be the only things, or humanity and the other races in the Westlands, like the Ogier, for example, will be the only people who are actually in their own way, because the Dark One and the Forsaken are now either dead, imprisoned, or fully sealed back in the bore, and we'll go back to that sort of possibility of the utopian society that the Age of Legends was? Or is it assumed that Rand didn't actually do a good enough job sealing the bore, and that the sort of third age is just sort of set to happen forever, where the Dark One breaks out because the bore is not sealed properly, and someone needs to then go seal it at the end, over and over and over again? Does that make sense?
So we obviously can't talk about the other ages, right? We only really have history and documentation, I say in air quotes, of the first, second, and third ages, right?
Sure.
We don't know if there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 20, 400 ages.
Well, and
we don't know how big this wheel is, how many spokes it's got.
And again, one of the reasons that I brought it up at the beginning is we don't actually know whether the first age, as it is called by some, is actually the first age, or whether it's age 616.
Yeah. It's the 600th time that the first age has played out,
for example. And so in the fourth age, are we actually just going into the first age again for the 617th time? Or are we just going to play the third age, as it is called by some, over and over again? Now, because age 1 was actually the first age, and then the bore happened, and now nothing will ever be the same. Or what do you guys think? What is sort of the nature of that relationship with the Dark One? Can the Dark One actually really be sealed back into his prison by humanity and not the creator himself, or themself, or whatever you want to call them? And so we're not ever actually going back to a perfect seal. Or did Rand actually do a perfect seal? So we're sort of back at the beginning of the moment of creation, but again, just like, over and over again.
I think, okay, so here's and I'm going to reference the TV show, right? Because Rand asks, how long does it take the wheel to spin someone's soul back out? And Tam says, don't know. Or he says, I wish I knew. And he gives this really beautiful speech about the reason, we have this is it's actually a blessing, because when our time comes again, maybe we do a little bit better next time. Now, is that a faith statement? Is that I hope I get the chance to do better when next I relive my life, when next I live my tale? Do I get the chance to do better, or are we just stuck doing this? Now, we know that Elan/Moradin 100% believes, no, we're stuck doing the same damn thing over and over and over again. I'm tired of that. I don't want to do that. Whether or not that's true, we don't know. We just don't. There's no way to know. We would assume that as time is cyclical, that everything that happened before will happen again, right?
Mhm.
How strict is that? Do we have markers? Are there certain events that must happen and therefore will happen again? But what happens between point A to point B doesn't really matter. They're gonna happen. Point A is gonna happen. Point B is gonna happen. It doesn't matter if you go straight here or if you go over here and then go over here and then go over here. It's gonna happen. Period. End of story. So when you start talking about the Dark One and did Rand, continue on with the ineffectual seal, or did he do a really good job? Is there capability of doing that as a mortal man? I would actually say no. I would say that the only reason he was able to do it without the consequence that Luz Theron unleashed upon the world is because he was able to insulate the One Power using the true source. He was able to make sure the Dark One couldn't touch Saidin and Saidar, right? And needed that extra bit of help. So it's one of those interesting scenarios because now we have the creation of the problem is also the solution to the problem that they created. Because the creation of the problem was them drilling into the Dark One's prison to be able to use that essence that is more powerful. As a result, now the Dark One's unleashed on the world. We have bubbles of evil. We have all kinds of crazy things. And I wish they had emphasized that in the TV show. This is actually one of my biggest criticisms with the TV show when Luz Theron is talking to when he's talking to, I'm assuming that's his wife.
No,
but he's saying we have a chance.
It's the Tamerlane, but okay.
Yeah. There. Okay, cool. It's the Tamerlane. He has a chance to end evil. And it's like they're making it look like shit's great. Everything's the best it's ever been. There's no problems. You know what we're going to do? Might fuck off and attack the Dark One. Why? Well, cause it's a good thing to do. It'd be hella cool, right? It's not needed. It's not necessary. Things are great out there. Now, if they had been like, I've got to go kill the Dark One because I unleashed him on the world and now I feel like crap. And they were like, yeah, you did. And now we got to figure out something to do it. But this ain't it. This ain't the solution. Like that, I think would have been a more compelling conversation. But I get it. They're trying to appeal to a TV audience of many, many people who probably have not read the books. But they bore into the Dark One's prison. They unleashed the Dark One upon the world.
Theron didn't actually do the drilling.
It doesn't matter who did the drilling. The point is the drilling was done. Dark One is now unleashed. The Dark One is now directly touching the pattern. And Luz Theron says, let's kill the Dark One. Goes out there, tries to kill the Dark One, faces the backlash, and as a last-ditch effort, puts on an imperfect seal to hold the Dark One back, but they still had access to the One Power, to the true source. So it's kind of like they created the problem by unleashing the Dark One. It was an imperfect, temporary measure. Ultimately, everyone knew it was a temporary measure. But they did the best that they could with what they had at the time. And that action, imperfect and temporary as it may be, is what allowed them to create the more perfect seal in the end to repair the damage that was originally done to the board.
There's a lot to unpack there. Andrew, what do you think?
Was that too much? Was that just like all too much gobbledygook there?
It wasn't gobbledygook. There are just a number of statements that I was a little. That again, I'm not gonna say them because we agree with everything that each other says all the time, always on this show.
We always agree with each other on everything.
I agree.
Yeah, again, it's sort of I actually do want to sort of talk about this point that you made of okay, so I will absolutely concede the point that Lews Therin in the Age of Legends is the most powerful Aes Sedai, basically.
Right.
And he is effectively a king, and he run the world in a lot of ways. Not everyone, not in every case, and I'm 100% sure that there are Emond's Fields out on the edge of his reign that have never seen a taxman and don't really give a shit who Lews Therin is. All of that's true. But again, he is sort of the most powerful and is a king. And so on some level, when Bidamon and Lanfear, I don't remember her first name, Mirren, discover this thing and drill into the Dark One's prison. I agree with the sign on Roosevelt's desk saying the buck stops with me. I get that. I appreciate that. And I do, to a certain degree, agree with it. But also, if you have that scene in the TV show where Lews Therin is standing there going, shit's fucked now because we let the Dark One out. It's my fault. I'm going to go kill him. That is definitely a misrepresentation of who actually let the Dark One out in some ways. Because again, while you are responsible for what your administration does, and the buck does stop with you, you are not actually the person who did certain things in your administration either. Both of those things are accurate, if that makes sense. And so given that there are a lot of non-book readers, I feel like that would be a very different representation of what actually happened, which granted, before anybody asks me, I get that the TV show is doing a lot of representing things differently than they happen in the books. I'm here for that. I get that. But at the same time, sort of that scene seems like it's not. I get the world looks great. Why do we need to go deal with the Dark One? Should have done a better job of representing that the world isn't actually great anymore. And that something needs to be done. But I feel like your suggestion for what should have happened in the TV show, heavy air quotes, because it's, one man's opinion, as you said, definitely strongly changes the sort of thing between the book and the TV show of Lews Therin's an arrogant asshole. He is 100%. It is very clear in the books that he is an arrogant asshole.
It is very clear that they thought he was an arrogant asshole.
Fair.
But
fair enough. Yes. We're gotcha. Because we don't actually really see Lews Therin's point of view in the book very often. We don't really hear his side of the story. We hear from Rand's interpretation of him and histories and people who met him, but never actually from Lews himself. And that I will totally concede. But I feel like it's actually well within the character stated by the books that Lews Therin would go, time to go kill the Dark One. And people would be like, why? We don't need to do that. That is not the best course of action, and it's not a necessary course of action. And he would be like, too bad, bitch, get in the car, we're gonna go kill the Dark One. Like, that's absolutely well within the character of what we know about Luz Theron. Again, as you said, from semi-unreliable sources, because they didn't actually necessarily, they weren't in his head. But at the same time, like, from the representation we see, that's a pretty Luz Theron move. Like,
and that's what I'm saying. Like, that's the piece. That's the one of the disconnects for me. And again, before anybody ats me, I did enjoy the TV show. I do have a number of things that I was kind of like less than enthusiastic about.
Sure.
But one of the things that got me about it was there are so many better ways to show someone is arrogant than to be like, everything's great, let's make it better. Like, he wasn't even doing that. He was like, in the show, he was like, I'm on this noble quest. I'm going to end evil. And it's like, at the height of civilization, show me it, at the very least, show me a reason why he would want this. I'm sorry, a baby in a crib, especially from like the richest, most powerful, most influential person of all time, bro, that baby gonna be just fine. Like, we're not, come on. Give me a reason. Have him witness some horrible evil that he was like, this wonderful society, and we still have this evil. Show me that. Give me that. Give me a reason to want him to succeed.
Maybe they didn't want to give you a reason to want him.
And that's the thing. They wanted to just create an arrogant son of a bitch who wanted to go into, and I'm kind of like that. You now have a flat character who nobody can identify with. It makes no sense. There's no reason for him to want to kill evil at the height of society. In my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Yes, indeed. And we all know that. Andrew, do you have an opinion on this particular thing? Slash, do you have an answer for my original question, which was, do you think that we're going to see this repeated over again from what some people call the first age, or do you think that we're sort of stuck in the third age into perpetuity unless something major happens, because that's, well down the road kind of thing? But do you think that Rand did a sort of perfect enough seal on it that we're back to square one? Or do you think that he did a Luz Theron stopgap seal where some kind of the Dark One getting back into the world and then another Rand having to go through a similar journey to then put another stopgap in is just going to happen over and over
again? I think it'll repeat. I think he did perfectly seal it. However, history repeats itself. Whenever history is inevitably forgotten or ignored, it repeats itself.
Okay, but you're on the sort of it will repeat itself from the creator's seal to reseal.
I think Rand's seal is the creator's seal.
Okay, yeah. So
I mean, it's just a redo of the creator's seal, because the creator only actually did the seal at one point in time.
Correct.
And the joy or the privilege of being a being that exists outside of space-time is that you can start something that exists in never-ending perpetuity.
Okay.
So he did it once, and then from there, his avatar, his actor, goes into the world as the dragon. And whenever the age calls for it, and the pattern calls for it, repairs the creator seal. Whenever it doesn't need that fully or needs some other stuff to happen, it's a partial seal. And there's probably a full age that goes by where the majority of the age, the Dark One, isn't sealed away. Somewhere around probably like the 6th or 7th. don't know.
You know,
But the thing I have more of an opinion on is the discussion about Lews Therin and how floored I am at the idea of an arrogant Lews Therin. That absolutely floored me. I have never read Lews Therin or even saw him in the TV show as arrogant.
well, that's
maybe
really, that's
maybe
why I
my
said people
shitty memory
perceived
is
him that way.
I mean, I didn't. I'm not saying anybody's wrong if they did. I didn't, and I do find myself struggling to recall points in the books or in the TV show that would paint him as arrogant, other than the Moraine's speech. Oh, Lews Therin in his arrogance thought he could do this, and it's like, well, actually, no, he wasn't fucking arrogant. He went to the Tomerlin, he asked for help, and the Tomerlin said, "Go get fucked." And he's like, well, I can't just not do this because the world is in peril. Because you got to remember, what the scene we're seeing in the TV show,
That's
he's
kinda
in,
what she said, though.
yeah, he's in Paradisant. He's in Paradisant,
I
the
highly
last
disagree with that.
paradise city that is standing. Meanwhile, Colum Dom and the Sharome has been absolutely obliterated. Like a nuke times 10 has gone off. The world is in absolute chaos.
Yes.
And they're only able to remain any semblance of calm because, again, they are in Paradisant. This is like the last bastion, the last stronghold of the Aes Sedai. And Lews Therin knows that, which is why he goes to the Tamerlane at the time. And he goes and says, hey, obviously the shit we're doing isn't working because shit is still fucky. We need to go and we need to patch the hole. And the Tamerlane's like, it's too dangerous because it exposes the only source of power we have to this great evil. And it's one of those things. Neither one of them is wrong. But because neither one is on the same page and helping the other, then they're not right either. Because had the female Aes Sedai gone with the male Aes Sedai, they would have met the metrics and they would have been able to put at least a more perfect seal. That oh, absolutely.
If I can jump in
or
for just a sec.
No,
sorry.
let Andrew finish.
Go ahead, finish up, Andrew. Sorry.
No, man, go ahead. That was pretty much it.
I was just going to say there are two things, though. One, at the point in time with the TV show, my understanding is he's talking about attacking the Dark One,
which is
not
actually
sealing the
accurate as well.
Right. He's talking about it. So at this point in time, presumably they've bored into the Dark One's prison. They have now gained access to the true source, the essence of creation and chaos itself.
Access to the true source, I would also say, isn't actually accurate. They didn't know enough about it that they don't actually have access to it whatsoever,
right.
But they have also unleashed it on the world, which would be different things.
Immaterial to the point of this particular aspect.
Sorry, continue.
The idea, though, is in the TV show, Lews Therin is saying to the Tamerlane, the prison is open. We have a chance to attack and kill the Dark One for good. Now, again, this is what I wanted to see. I wanted to see a reason why. I wanted to see bubbles of evil because that's what was happening. The second they open up the Dark One's prison, the Dark One now is unleashed upon the world. And he's like, or it, I guess, is like, I'm going to destroy everything because I'm the Dark One. Lews Therin is thinking to himself, I've got to attack this head on. Now, the arrogance portion of that is that a mortal man thinks he can go up against a god and come out on top. But at the same time, desperate times call for desperate measures. What do you do when you see your perfect society that you've worked your entire life to build and refine and hone suddenly being destroyed? You want to stop the destruction. They blast out, they attack the Dark One. We don't know why the women decided not to. They were like, we don't want to. That's not a good idea.
Yeah,
well, they said they don't want to. That's not a good idea. We learned afterwards, we learned after the fact why that was a really great thing for them to not do. But
maybe
there were two instances. There was one, Lews Therin attacking the Dark One. thus tainting Sidene. I imagine, as Andrew, as you had said earlier on in the show, time passes. And I imagine there are a lot of men who were like, oh, this is not okay. Shit's fucky. This is not okay. Slowly, they started to go mad. I'm sure they spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to create the seals. Once they created the seals, they had those meetings, which we got to see through the Visions in Ruidian. We got to see one of those meetings where they charged where they charged the Green Man with protecting the Eye of the World, which carried at least one seal. I think it was like 2 seals or something. But along with the Dragon's Banner, along with the Horn of Valir, along with all that kind of stuff. But there are 2 instances that Lews Therin is involved in this sort of interaction. The first one would being the attack on the Dark One, which tainted Sidene. The second one being to seal up the boar. But the problem is that after the boar was sealed, A, it was an imperfect seal, and B, the taint still remained.
So, okay, I'm gonna fact check you just a little bit here.
Hit me.
Number one, the sealing of the boar and the seals on the Dark One's prison actually happened at exactly the same time, right after the attack that tainted Sidene. There is no time that passes.
Oh.
He attacks the Dark One in his prison, fails, stopgaps the seals, and then the seals are basically, they had Quendiar with them.
Yeah, because I know most of
And
the
they're-
companions died in the backlash.
Just for starters. So he seals the Dark One's prison with this stopgap thing and these seals that they effectively brought with them, not necessarily for this purpose. It's a little hard to say whether the Quendiar was made for some other reason and then they just decided it was a good use of this after the backlash.
There's 7 rocks right here. Let's turn them into Quendiar and use them.
Again, it's a little unclear as far as the story is concerned, he attacks the Dark One. It doesn't work. He seals him as best he can right then. With the 100 companions that are effectively, some of them are dying around him.
Okay. I actually never knew that. Like, I'm learning something new. I thought it was attack the Dark One. Shit, it's fucky. What do we do? Oh God, we need help. We need help. I need an adult. And then they make a plan and come back to it.
No.
With the seals.
So it's actually one stroke effectively. It's effectively 2 smashings of the power into the prison. One to try and kill him and then one to go ahead and seal it, like basically immediately when the first one doesn't work.
Which would be why it's imperfect, because he just
Part of
did
it.
it as a fuck.
That is part of it.
I
Also,
got
again,
7 of these.
I feel like you have I do want to say a couple of things. I think that Andrew is actually very correct that the going to do this or him being in Paradisen, and there's a reason that he's there. It's to talk to the Tamerlane. It's to be in the last bastion of human civilization at what was until moments ago the height of their power.
Right.
And by
Also where the
moments ago,
governmental
I mean,
seat is, because that's where the Hall of
Also
Servants is.
correct. So there's about 100 years between the time that they drill and the time that he goes and attacks the Dark One. And so he's in Paradisen sometime within those 100 years, but probably on the latter side. And it was the height of human civilization when they drilled into the boar, or when they drilled into the Dark One's prison, creating the boar. And now things are getting fucky. But you said earlier that it's bubbles of evil coming through. I'm pretty sure that they actually talk about, and again, very much unreliable narrator here, because the people who are talking about this don't actually necessarily know what they're talking about, but they do have an idea. They do. That the bubbles of evil are actually just the malice of the Dark One coming through the seals, rather than the Dark One actually acting on the world. Because, of course, the boar makes a hole for him to act through. I think that there aren't actually bubbles of evil happening after the boar. I think there are bubbles of evil happening after the sealing, the imperfect sealing. But again, that is sort of neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Because again, to your point, Josh, very much true. It doesn't feel like it's in the TV show at the very least. It doesn't feel like it's a desperate attempt to go ahead and do something that the world needs, because they don't do a very good job of showing how screwed up and chaotic the world has become because they're in Paradisen. But also, Andrew's point is huge, which is the show only has 8 episodes. They only have so much time to show this conversation. So since it's in Paradisen, they're going to show you Paradisen, which is still the last bastion of humanity, and still awesome. And so again, I totally take your point of, I wish that it had been more desperate, but also to be accurate to where the books are, if they're in Paradisen, they need to be in Paradisen. They can't have Paradisen falling apart around them, because Paradisen doesn't fall until after Luz Theron screws things up and breaks it. To your point though, Andrew, I know that he's not a terribly reliable narrator, and neither is Moraine, and neither are the other Forsaken who sort of talk about him, who have something to gain from talking shit about Luz Theron and never really liked him that much in the first place, and all of this different stuff. But Ishamael literally starts the books in the prologue by telling Luz Theron that he's an arrogant asshole who did all of this to his family and needs to go ahead and come to terms with the fact that this is all his fault, because he was arrogant. So at the very least, again, I'm not saying that you're not right in a lot of ways, that it can easily be taken to a certain extent that that's not a good representation of actually who Luz Theron is, and that there's other people with ulterior motives. But at the very least, the books don't shy away from the fact that lots of people think that Luz Theron is arrogant. Sorry, go ahead and
to
say
counter that. One, it's Ishmael that is saying this. All right.
Okay.
He is already 100% of the mind that any sort of resistance to the Dark One is futile. And the mere act of resistance in his mind is going to be nothing but arrogance or foolishness and pure stupidity.
Sure.
Generally, whenever somebody that has a lot of power does something that is stupid, it gets labeled arrogance.
Sure.
Because it gets labeled, that doesn't mean that it is.
Yeah.
Because
we actually have
Luz Theron doesn't
about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Luz Theron doesn't go into this going, "Oh, I'm going to go fight the Dark One and win." I'm going to go fight the Dark One, and either I win or all of humanity is doomed, because there's nothing else I can do. There's nothing else to do. Because they've been fighting battles after battles. Luz Theron has won and lost battles. He has fought and won and fought and lost against Ishmael time and time again since the Boar. And he's going into this fight against the Dark One, a desperately broken and purely desperate man. He just got done defeating Ishmael, his best friend, at the gates of Paradisen. And he's like, they're coming to Paradisen. This is where we run the world from. I have a kid. I have a family. I have friends. I can't lose any more friends. These are the last actions, not of an arrogant man, but of a desperate man who is charged with being the ray of hope, the beacon of light, the salvation of the world.
You're not wrong.
Now, is it stupid to not wait for the Chosen Call to be finished to give yourself yet another power boost? Yeah,
say.
kinda.
Hard to say.
Because I mean, I think if you have something that gives you that much of a power boost, like actually, it's probably a saving grace ultimately in the timeline, because if Luz Theron and the Tamerlane had marched on the board with the Chosen Call, and if Rand's feelings are true and anything they go off of, and they could have actually legitimately destroyed the Dark One, they would have destroyed all of space and time.
Effectively.
So, yeah. So, I mean, and at least it might just be my reading of it. I never read Luz Theron as doing any of this out of anything other than a sense of duty, a sense of no one else is willing to do something, and no one else is also providing a tangible solution other than let's wait. And we see what waiting has gotten us. Waiting has gotten us, 13 of our friends, people that we worked alongside of, that we trusted, that we broke bread with, that we ate with, that we went through harsh times together, that we built this paradise with, abandon the light and go to the shadow because of how desperate these times are. And I mean, I don't know how you cope with that. I mean, like anime is a great reference. How does Naruto, like the entirety of Naruto Shippuden is still him chasing fucking Sasuke because he can't cope with the concept of losing his best friend. And what's the one way after having and being forced to defeat Ishmael? What's the one way that he stands any chance at getting any kind of retribution for his best friend? Well, taking the fight to the person and hopefully ending this against the entity responsible. So, yeah.
So I will say, sort of just a minor counterpoint to that, or a minor sort of my reading of it. I think that the Tamerlane is very much a microcosm or a caricature or whatever you want to call it of the White Tower once it's formed later, of your answer isn't good enough. We need to come up with a better one. And as you said, waiting is death to a certain extent. Because if you just do what the White Tower often does, and what the Tamerlane sort of suggests at this time, is she has sort of good intentions to a certain degree, because even in the TV show, she definitely doesn't tell him to fuck off. She says, your plan isn't a good one. We can't risk it. We need to come up with a better one. Help us do that. And he says, no, this is the only plan. We need to go do it. Now, again, I'm totally fine with putting that into the things are desperate. I'm a broken man. We need to do something now. Let's go do something now. We don't have time to wait for a better plan. But she doesn't tell him to fuck off. She tells him we need a better plan than that, which is also a certain amount of noble, given that we know how badly his plan goes. But again, hindsight's 2020. She didn't know that from the start. She suspected, but she didn't know that. So going ahead and giving her the benefit of what actually happens is not totally fair.
I give her zero benefit. I lay the full fault of the catastrophic failure in the Tageside team on her, on the Tamerlane.
Well,
so that is very interesting, because again, I am in no way stating anything more than just this statement here. I think it's interesting that you read Luz as obviously having culpability, clearly, but also not being responsible for the breaking because this person's responsible for the breaking, because if things had gone the way that he wanted,
I never said he wasn't responsible for the breaking.
I mean, okay.
He's not responsible for the taint. He's not responsible for the catastrophic failure.
Yeah.
He is responsible for the breaking.
We're seeing
so
what we're
given
seeing.
that we actually have the benefit of all the way through the story, and we know that to a certain extent, Rand couldn't have actually done what he did without tapping into the power of a god, the true source. Or at least it is strongly suggested by Rand and Nynaeve and Moraine that this was the only way to do it. Again, they don't know everything, and I get that. But it is strongly suggested that their understanding of what's going on is they needed the true source to actually help them do that. I find it hard to believe in some ways that Luz Theron had the plan to use Saidin, Saidar, and the true power to do what he did. And therefore, if he didn't have the true power, and from our understanding, based on what Rand and Moraine and Nynaeve say, they needed the true source to do what they did, it seems like actually bringing Saidar into the picture without the true source is a recipe for more disaster, not less.
Which is what
Does
my
that make
original
sense?
point was.
I'm not saying they would be completely successful. I'm saying the catastrophic failure. Because whenever they cleanse the taint on Saidin, they don't use the true source at all.
That is correct.
It is Saidin and Saidar. So what I'm saying is it's a catastrophic failure because the taint could have been prevented. Saidin and Saidar could have co-optively protected each other from the taint. They could have siphoned it off of each other, I believe.
I will
enough.
disagree with you on that,
So
because
they definitely wouldn't have succeeded
Sure.
had they went. But I think the patch job they did would
Was
have
that
been
much worse?
better. Yeah,
Okay.
it would have been
Copy.
better had they both
Understood.
went. They still wouldn't have been like completely successful because you're absolutely right. They had no idea to use the true power. Like most people don't think using the power you just released to then seal that same power away. They're just like, oh well, you just got to push it all back in and hope you can put the lid back on.
Yeah, fair. Sorry, Josh, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say that when it came to cleansing the taint, they used Aridol as the buffer rather than the true source. I think that's where Rand got the idea to do that. However, it's almost like we're having this conversation because we know there's no actual real answers to it.
That is true.
Thus,
we don't actually
the
get
beautiful
legitimate answers.
story points in the Wheel of Time is that everybody's doing their best, and this is my final thoughts on the matter. We're gonna wrap this up. This is my final thoughts on the matter. I'm gonna hone in on the conversation between the Tamerlane and Luz Theron. Books, TV show, whatever the case may be, based on the story we understand, based on the story we know, love, and understand. It's two incredibly intelligent, capable, powerful people looking for the best solution to a scenario and disagreeing.
What?
Shock and awe. And so what happens is, Andrew, I think you are absolutely 100% correct. When you have someone very, very powerful taking a very, very big risk and it pays off, everybody goes, what a genius. What an amazing man. What an amazing person. They did so amazing. If they take that same risk and fail, what do they go? What a loser. How come he couldn't pull that off? Luz Theron's treatment in history is, I would say, unfair because he failed. But at the same time, even in his failure, he bought the world time. Time they needed to learn very crucial, very important lessons. Do we all make mistakes? Absolutely. Do powerful people make mistakes? Absolutely. When powerful people make mistakes, does it have greater ramifications on people as a whole? Absolutely. So my final thoughts is, don't be too quick to judge, kids. Sometimes people make mistakes. Nobody's perfect, no matter how powerful they are.
Andrew, what do you think?
Oh, I was gonna let you give your final thought.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. I yeah, this is a very complicated, very nuanced thing, which is a wonderful this is a wonderfully nuanced situation. This is a thing that I think that Robert Jordan did really well, which is showing people as people. And love them or hate them for whatever reason, for whatever read that you took. I think that Josh sort of hit the nail on the head. I definitely think that there are people who are bad actors in some ways, that there are people who know what they're doing is wrong and do it anyway. But most of the people, at the very least, in the Age of Legends, at the end of the Age of Legends, excuse me, are doing what thank you are doing what they're doing because they think they're right, because they think what they're doing is the right thing to do. Both Lewis Theron going and doing what he did, both as well as the Tamerlane not going with him, as well as, you know, the researchers who actually created the boar in the first place, you know, all of these different things. And it's a really interesting sort of talk to have on a lot of levels, because of course we started this with, did people know that the Dark One was real? And on some levels that does matter, because really knowing that there's an entity out there that actively wants to hurt you is helpful to a certain degree to fighting back against it. But at the same time, there are plenty of people who are just shitty. There are plenty of people who are just doing the wrong thing for the right reasons, or the wrong thing for the wrong reasons, or being selfish, or being greedy, or being whatever. And I think that, as has been stated in other episodes that we've done, as has been stated in this episode, when you fail, your motives are questioned. When you succeed, your motives are questioned less. At least if it's some altruistic or seen as a good thing. And unfortunately, Lewis Theron failed pretty hard. He and his society failed badly. Now, whether that was his fault, other people's fault, a combination of everyone's fault, really hard to say, because we just don't have that much information about everybody. Maybe if he had given them another year, society would have stayed together enough for them to come up with a better plan. Maybe if he had gone ahead and had the Tamerlane's help, it would have stopped the taint from happening. Maybe if they had gone with the express intent of going ahead and just sealing the boar from the beginning, things would have been different. It's so hard to say, because we don't have the benefit of what could have happened. We only have what did happen. So I will admit, I have definitely always read Lewis Theron as fairly arrogant, and I think that Andrew has given me a lot to think about, which is nice. I like when my co-hosts give me things to think about that I didn't do myself. So thanks for that, Andrew. And you know, I hope that
Likewise.
I have done that and can do that for other people at some point. And that's the reason that we do this show. So my final thoughts are, we're going to keep doing this show because it's both fun for us and also eye-opening for, at the very least, me. And I think also Andrew and Josh, and I hope all of you. And we'll see how it goes from there.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you and Josh both made points that I really like, and it's the how you're viewed when you fail versus how you're viewed when you succeed. I have been on this hill for years. I will continue to die on this hill for years. That Luz Theron gets an unfair share of condemnation for the failure, and the Tamerlane gets an unfair share of we'll let it pass. Because there comes a point for me where do I believe that they both thought they were doing the right and responsible thing? Absolutely. Given the style of society and the roles they played, absolutely, I think they both thought they were doing the right thing. The problem comes in where, and again, the central theme or the one of the biggest central themes of the entire books is cooperation and collaboration. And that's the cardinal sin of the second age. We split. And I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that. And nobody throws them in a closet, locks the door, and makes them figure out a fucking solution for it. And it could have been honestly just as simple as, hey, the Choden Call are almost done because we know they're finished before the breaking. They have to be because nobody knows how to make that shit anymore. Let's hold off on the counterstroke for, X amount of time until it's done, and then we can do this, whatever. But then again, also that not happening is also saving, whatever. They could have made a bunch of different agreements. Like you said, they could have gone in with the intent to just patch over the board to lessen his influence, whatever.
Yep.
But because he failed, Luz Theron he gets the brunt of the criticism because he's the one that went out and did something, and one of the byproducts was something bad happening in return.
Correct.
That did snowball into a really bad fucky wucky.
Indeed.
And the really bad fucky wucky is 100% his fault. Like, if you're going to go into battle, at least have a way to protect yourself and your troops. So there's that.
Protect yourself at all times. Follow my instructions at all times. Now, on a good, clean fight, touch gloves if you want.
Yeah. Where the fuck was I going with that? I had a follow-on point.
I don't know. Sorry.
Oh, dude, you're fine. Now, I am tired. In case anybody thinks I've been like real snippy and snappy, I am fucking tired. All right. I am being rode like a penny hooker and put away wet and broken at work. It's fucking busy.
That sucks. I'm sorry, dude.
Yeah. Well, we might have a new person coming in, so at least we won't go down any numbers. But we also aren't going up any because we got another guy leaving next week.
Thanks.
But anyway, yeah, I do love how we got into this discussion about the second age, kind of coming from this. Do people even know the Dark One really exists or not? And it's not really something I'm sure I've thought about it, but not really like this. And looking at the timelines, like I really do believe, and there's probably another moment where this happens in like the 5th or 6th age or something again, where there's a relatively narrow span of time in the scope of the overall amount of time that anybody really knows that the Dark One exists, much less a larger swath of people. But in the end, knowing that something exists and believing something exists generally have almost identical effects, depending obviously on the amount of people that believe that it really does exist or just believe that it could exist.
Sure.
There's still discussions about, how you could fall off the edge of the earth because the earth is flat, because people believe the earth is flat. Which, live your best life, believe what you want to believe. I don't really care because it doesn't affect me.
More often than not,
do you? But yeah, I'm rambling at this point. So
you're good. You're at least saying good things in your rambling.
Yes, I do that sometimes. But yeah, I think that might be a good idea for us to do as an episode. And actually dedicate an episode to really analyzing how Paradisen and its era was lost as well as we can, because I think we might get more clues throughout the rest of the books than we realize. Either we get more clues than we realize, or we have less clues and I think more things are clues than they actually are. But it could be a fun episode to talk about, especially if our fact checker Mahil winds up being here, so he can tell me or us or whoever how wrong we are or are not. So No, I liked it. This is a really fun episode. Yes, we will continue to do this stuff. We enjoy it. We love talking about this kind of stuff. And it just gets even more interesting when we do, especially when we have like a significant disagreement in how things went. Like we
That's
generally
true.
disagree on little points here and there relatively
Oh,
frequently,
sure.
but when we have like an entire detraction from trains of thought, is surprisingly rare, I think.
Yes, that is true. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I will definitely say, and one of the things that I very much appreciate about both of the two of you and sort of this show in general, is the fact that other than seemingly sort of minor details, more often than not, by a very wide margin, our disagreements actually do come from different takes and different opinions and different reads of the story, rather than, oh, this person is actually just wrong on their facts. This person is just wrong on the pieces of information that they got, which I think is lovely. I know that we make the joke all the time of, we're supposed to agree all the time. It is a funny joke, partially because we've all heard podcasts that do that, and not trying to call anybody out specifically, but they're not that interesting to listen to. And also,
if you're talking on the show and you hear an echo, maybe take a break and think about it a little bit.
Right.
Just saying.
Yeah. Or find better, not better, but find more interesting topics that actually get more play on your platform. Whatever. Either way.
Just do something different.
Right. And we've also gotten reviews that have said that, which, again, I absolutely concur to a certain degree that there are episodes where we have agreed with each other, where we all are of the same opinion, because it is possible for three human beings to be on the same page about certain things.
Live.
That being said, it's not that likely, and there are so many more episodes where we bring more to each other's attention, at the very least by just stating a different opinion, rather than necessarily going ahead and like harping on it or doing anything like that, which I think is great. I think it's great, and I really hope that you guys do as well, which is nice transition into thank you very, very much for being here, everybody. We super appreciate all of the listeners who go ahead and actually listen through episodes, and whether you appreciate it or you think it was dumb or whatever, you were here. You were here for this. You are part of this. Especially our Patreons who actually like join us live and sort of make comments as we're making comments. You guys are a very strong piece of these episodes, and we appreciate the shit out of it. If you're not a part of our Patreon, we still very, very much appreciate you. We just don't get to hear from you live, which is totally fine. But thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all of the support that you guys have shown, because we could technically do this without you, but it would be a lot less meaningful. It would be a lot less important, and it would be a lot less fun without you guys here. And that cannot be overstated. So thank you for being here, and we will continue to be here as long as we see a need for it. And so far, it seems like there is a desire for it. So we'll be here every week. Definitely hope to hear from you guys again next week, whether you're a Patreon or not. And Josh had to jet, so you'll probably see him leave the video, as well as you probably saw him leave our Discord if you're listening live. But I'm sure that he sends his love and his thanks from the Tsora Van Mahale. I have been your Amin Khan Mahale. Jesus. Old tongue.
There, Amin Can.
Yeah, that Amin Khan Mahale, dude.
The almond can.
I'm allergic to those. Please don't do that to me.
The ultimate torture.
Oh, God.
And I've been your Bajan Mahale, Andrew.
Awesome. And again,
Daniel has the fancy goodbye words.
thank you very much. And again,
Sure.
I thank you seriously, guys. I know that we say it a lot, but it's very, very true. Have a lovely rest of your evening. We hope that you're having a wonderful morning. And in case we don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening, and good
the show.
In the tower, you can bring your pain. In the tower, you can feel the strain.
You've been having so much trouble just fitting in.